Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolowski, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Well, hi and welcome back. I don't know if you've ever thought about what firefighters need in terms of their own safety when they are fighting fires and taking care of people and rescuing and so forth. But above all, they need water and they need breathing air in order to effectively perform their mission, saving lives. So today's show is going to give you some insights into how something called FARS, F-A-R-S. If you don't know what that is, don't feel bad. I didn't either. FARS is helping firefighters stay safe and do their jobs more effectively. Now, you know what this orange hat means, too. I am so thrilled to, again, have this show sponsored by TDIndustries, a premier facilities and maintenance service and mechanical construction company. It's headquartered in Dallas, Texas, with offices, though, throughout Texas and also in Phoenix, Arizona. TD was founded by a World War II veteran in 1946. Been around a long time. And TD embraces what I love, which is a culture of servant leadership. Here's what's important about that. TD continually strives to seek strong, long-lasting relationships with their customers and their vendors and their partners. And one of those relationships is going to be involved with today's 2 guests that I have with me. So first of all, Andrew Kobe. I'm so glad to have you on the show, Andrew. Andrew, as Vice President of TD's Process Solutions, leads the team that specializes in what they call high purity solutions for mission critical buildings. And he'll tell you a little bit more about that. He'll be able to explain the simple terms of what FARS is and how their certified installers are making a difference with firefighting teams. And we also have with us today Plano Fire Chief Sam Greif. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
And Sam is going to talk about how this technology and partnering with TD is helping our firemen save lives. So now I can take my hat off and start the show. And Andrew, I want to ask you the first question, which is, would you please, in fact, talk about what FARS is and how did TD become an expert in this?
Yeah, so FARS, F-A-R, and that's all capitalized, is how you'll see it in the industry with a small s, is a Firefighter Air Replenishment System. Okay. So TD initially was introduced to it out in Arizona, and then as the local leaders here adopted it, we really saw it as a system that fit our skill set very well, and that we could partner with them to go install it in the in buildings around North Texas.
And so when you well, first of all, you were the first, weren't you?
We were the first certified installer.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about how that is important in mission critical buildings, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so the group that I support, the group of partners at TDIndustries that I support, focuses on mission critical facilities. So these are typically facilities that operate 24/7, 365. A lot of them are high-tech manufacturers that may be making consumer devices for your phone, maybe making manufacturing a drug product in the pharmaceutical market. And this, as we talk about mission critical, we view FARS as a mission critical system. If you think about where these systems are used, and we'll talk about that a little bit, it really connected well with the mission critical piece, because there's probably nothing more critical than what Sam and his team are doing when they're called upon for a rescue.
And so how are you partnering with the fire department? How did all that happen?
So we were working with a supplier of these systems, and it was brought on by the code and code compliance, and that's where our specialty lies, is to ensure that owners and developers are able to build buildings that are in compliance with code. And as the FARS was introduced, we did research to understand what these systems components are, what the design entails, and became the expert in it. And we've had some very successful projects starting in Plano here in Texas.
So how did the partnership happen? Did you just pick up the phone and say, Plano Chief Sam Greif, I think you ought to take a look at this?
Yeah.
Or how did that happen?
So the initial request actually came in through a general contractor. TD's a specialty subcontractor, and we worked with that general contractor. And yeah, through the plan review, got connected with the city and got direction on where we start this journey together.
Okay. I have to ask one last question before I get to Sam, and that is, what is it? What does it look like? Where is it in the buildings? Like, if I go into a building, how would I know if FARS is in that building that's going to help firefighters?
That's a great question, and typically as an occupant, you're not going to see it. We've had water risers in buildings for fire suppression for years, and a lot of people haven't seen them, unless maybe you're scared of an elevator and you've taken the stairs.
Okay.
Typically these systems reside in a stairwell to where the rescue teams will be coming in and being able to connect their air supply to that local air replenishment nozzle. So you're typically not going to see it.
Okay, so Chief, would you take it from there? And your team is in fact on a rescue mission, and they need this. How did it happen before FARS, and now what can they do?
In
What's
a building
the process?
that doesn't have FARS, which unfortunately is the majority of them, high rise, a typical air bottle, when you're actively engaged in a firefight, depending on how good a shape you're in, there's a lot of variables, but somewhere 15-20 minutes is all you're going to get out of that air bottle, and then you're going to have to get it replaced. Well, you can't replace it in a hot, smoky environment, so usually you will have to retreat back to a area of safety, which is usually the stairwell, and then there'll be what we call a bottle brigade. Someone has to physically carry up these bottles, and they're not light, and it takes a lot of human resource to get those bottles up to the floor in which you're going to need it, or directly below the floor in which the firefight's engaged. So it's a very labor-intensive operation to take those bottles up, versus having the FARS, where when you step into that stairwell, you can immediately plug your SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus for our audience. You can plug that in and fill your bottle up, and then re-engage in the firefight again. So it takes out that home need to have a bottle brigade, which again, it's extremely labor intensive. You could use up what we call a one alarm assignment, 4 engines and a couple of trucks, companies, just to carry the bottles in, because it's just a very old-fashioned way in which to get bottles to the incident, and very time consuming, and it's chewing into the precious human resource that could be doing much more important things at that moment.
Had no idea that it's only about 15 minutes, and think about the firefighters that are up on, I don't know, way high floors. How long now does it, so I'm a firefighter, and now it's in a FARS building, that's great, and so I find the stairwell, and how long now does it take to give me more air and water?
Well, the water should be there automatically because of the standpipes. Those
Okay.
have been in the fire code for many years, so we'll have that available, and we'll literally carry our hose up, a hose pack, and tie into the water valve, and then that gives us the hose necessary on that floor. Now we can go out, and to answer your question, probably just a couple of minutes to be able to refill the bottle back up again. And so the whole, having to take a knee, as we say, and it's a manual process. I mean, there's steps to removing the bottle and putting the new bottle in before you can actively go back on air. And so that process, not only getting it up there, but the changing out of the bottle can be time consuming. So this just negates all of the necessity for that. I mean, if I was going to give you an analogy, is before a FARS systems, it's like going across a long travel distance by horse and buggy, and now you're going by a high-speed sports car. That's how much of a difference it is having the FARS system in a building versus not having it.
So interesting. So many little things that, it's not a little thing, but intricacies of different industries doing different things, and the public, me, being so naive, I don't even think about the safety issue in terms of how they are getting the water. Why doesn't then this be a necessity in every building?
Well, and the reality is fire codes can be challenging to just get it into the code, as we say, and then once it's in the code, cities have to then adopt that code. And so we've been blessed. Plano has always been a city that embraces strong public safety and safety of our citizens. And as you alluded to earlier with Andrew, I'm proud to say that the city of Plano was the first city in the state of Texas to have an operational FARS system installed. To date, we have 6 operational systems, and we have 5 currently that are under construction that are being installed, and every new building that comes in that meets the code requirements for the FARS will have them in the city of Plano. So we're excited about it. Hopefully someday it'll just be as commonplace as a sprinkler system or a standpipe, but the reality is there is an expense to it, and a lot of times there's a resistance, whether it be from the builders or from the building owner. Different organizations tend to be somewhat resistive of codes, and you have to kind of get over that hurdle.
So that goes to innovation, you being an innovative leader and being a strong leader. How did you get into being a firefighter in the first place? I try to tell everybody, and it sounds corny, but just as a minister gets called to the cloth, I knew at an early age I wanted to be a firefighter paramedic, and set my sights on it when I was about 15 years old. As soon as I got out of high school, I went to emergency medical technician school, got out, within the same year of graduating high school, and went to work for the city's Fort Worth ambulance provider at the time, and then did that for 4 years till I got on the fire department. So, I mean, I've been doing this since I was 18 years old, and I don't ever want to do anything else. I love it. You've got to have passion to do what you're doing.
I am passionate about it, but it's the old adage, if you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Definitely holds true for me.
What does it take to be a firefighter? What skills, what attributes? I'm sitting out here listening, let's say somebody's listening to the show. Maybe they're thinking, oh, maybe my son might be good at that. Well, what does that look like?
If I'm being totally candid, I mean, there's a joke in the fire service, and we're, somewhat, we'll joke about ourselves a lot of times, and we'll say strong back, weak mind, that's all you need. But that's not the case. It's a very difficult job. It's physically demanding, so obviously you have to be in good physical shape and maintain that good physical conditioning. But it's also way more cerebral than most people realize. Most modern day firefighters, especially in a city like Plano that has the ambulance service underneath the fire department, we're paramedics. That's an extremely arduous program to get through. It definitely takes a lot of brains to go through that and to keep up with the changing medicine side of it. Then you've got hazardous materials, you've got high angle trench rescue, high angle rescue, heavy rescue in cars, buses, or trains. I mean, there's a lot of specialties within the fire service, and there's a lot of cross training. So you have to have a lot of grit and determination, be physically fit, and contrary to what some might think, you actually got to have some brain cells going around up in there too. So
I'm sure you do.
It's sort of a combination of everything.
Yeah.
And so what about you? How did you get into engineering? Now, are you like him at high school at 15? You knew what you were going to do, or what?
Most definitely not. I grew up on a small dairy farm up in Michigan, and really on the engineering side started by reverse engineering and thinking about a connection with you. I got a fire truck when I was a little kid, and rather than play with it, I had to tear it apart to see what was on the inside of it. And I don't think now that I'm older, I joke about it with my parents, but thinking back then, rather than enjoying it, it was always about figuring out how it works, how it operates, and that kind of took me into engineering school, and I've spent the rest of my life figuring out how things go back together.
That's called solutions.
That's right.
Now, when you joined TD, you were not doing what you're doing now. So how did that career path happen for you?
Yeah, so the great thing about TD, when I moved down here originally, it was really to chase the tower cranes. And at that time, there was a lot of construction in Texas, and there still is, fortunately. But when I came down here, I started within the engineering group. TD has a great engineering group, but really targeted a company where I knew there was opportunity outside of that current role. And as I spent time within the engineering group, was working on healthcare facilities and mission critical facilities, and that really led me into the field, into the construction side.
Is there one story maybe that of innovation and leadership? Because again, I know that that's what TD is known for. Is there one story in the work that you have done there that was kind of unique and you're really proud of?
Yeah, so we work in some pretty interesting facilities. Like I mentioned earlier, they operate 365, 24/7, and it was interesting. I got married. It's been 6 years now, but a lot of times when we go into facilities, we have to do shutdowns. They may only idle the building down twice a year. Well, the night before I proposed to my wife, we had a shutdown. So I had several things going through my mind at that time about how do we operate, how do we ensure that this building maintains operation, and how do I take this next jump into the chapter of my life. And it's interesting how your personal and professional life come together. But back to what you said, Sam, if you find something that you have passion about, that you like working, it doesn't feel like work every day. And I'm fortunate to have that environment. Sounds like you are too.
So Sam, let's come back to you for a moment. I'll ask the same question. In the work, the real work that goes on in what you do, is there a story that sticks out as being, gosh, this was a wonderful outcome?
Oh, I've been doing this for 38 years. I've got a lot of stories of good outcomes and sad outcomes, but I think I've only been the fire chief since 2015, the summer of 2015, so a little over 4 years now I've been the chief in Plano. I think the outcome I'm most proud of is firefighting is the ultimate team sport, number one. So the chief doesn't accomplish anything as the chief. You accomplish it through a team effort, and you have to go outside the fire department. So I look at the overall impact of firefighter safety that the city of Plano has embraced and funded for the firefighters and their safety. And we've had a lot of initiatives that have come on. We have a very robust health and safety program now where we get very intensive annual physicals that hopefully and have found very serious illnesses, cancers, heart disease, and things like that at the very early stages so that they can have positive outcomes. We have source capture for all of our fire trucks. That's the exhaust system that we have, like hoses that come out of the ceiling. Andrew's company has done those as well that hook up to the exhaust pipe, so when you start the truck, all of those carcinogens get sucked up and filtered instead of going into the atmosphere of the truck room where the men and women are working. So we've had a lot of positive things that have come along. We have extractors now in all of our stations. It's fancy word for it's a specialized washing machine that washes bunker gear in an appropriate manner the way the manufacturer recommends to do it, so we're getting those carcinogens out. So I think in the last 4 years, the outcome I'm most proud of is that the men and women of Plano Fire-Rescue are going to be exponentially safer on a go-forward basis because of the courage that the city leaders have had and the willingness to fund those initiatives, because they don't necessarily come cheap. But the human resource is often referred to as the most important resource, and I'm proud to say that our officials, elected and city leaders, they back that up with action and not just words.
May I call you Sam?
Absolutely.
Okay, Chief Sam. When I think about the fire stations, I remember as a little girl going to a fire station and people coming up, the people that were working at the fire station made me feel like I was really important. They picked me up, and then I took them to the fire station, and now I take my grandchildren to the fire station. And that has kind of been a tradition, it seems like, that just firemen innately are family, and of course you are, because you're living together for how many hours at a time, by the way?
Different departments do it different, but the overwhelming majority of the fire departments work what's called a 24-48. So you'll go to work for a 24-hour shift, and then you'll be off for the next 48, and then you'll rotate back again. So literally a third of your life is with your fire department family. And so I've been blessed to always say I've had two families, my actual family, and then I've had my fire department family all these years. And you truly do become a family. And to your point, I think firefighters tend to be gregarious people. They like people, or they couldn't do what they're doing. I think we all relate to that little boy or little girl that we were when we dreamed of being firefighters someday. So when one of them comes into the station, it's natural that you love on them a little bit and want to show them around, because that could be the spark that, literally makes them go on to choose that as a career field.
Well, now, though, that you are the leader, what are some leadership attributes that work for you in leading these teams?
Well, I think that was key, what you just said, what works for you, because I always say leaders come in all shapes, sizes, and different personality styles and leadership styles. What's worked for me is I think I genuinely love people. I think that comes across, that I'm a genuine person. I'm not hung up on titles. It's not the pomp and circumstance of the position.
You're authentic. Isn't that interesting? Or you wouldn't be on this show.
Well, I appreciate that. I like to think that I am. But I think my genuine embracing of folks, and I think my leadership style is to surround yourself with, as John Kennedy said, the best and the brightest, and allow them to empower them to go do good things, and just let them know that you have their back and that you support them. And the old adage of treat those as the way you want to be treated. It's not a secret formula. I think there's a lot of leaders out there that do great work, and if you look at that common thread, is they actually like those that they're leading, and they truly care about them.
That is such an important message. I don't know how anyone could miss it, but if you're a leader, don't you have to like the people that you're leading, right?
Yes.
That's so simple. What about you?
Yeah, I said it very well, but you do have to like those that you're working with, and you have to have a strong desire to serve others and to be there for others, and understand that individuals go through different circumstances, and to have that family type atmosphere, to be able to walk through that with them, and to be able to come to work every day with a smile on your face, and to make it better as you progress through the day, so that when you leave there, you've got a smile on your face, and have battled through any adversity that come your way.
When I came over to your office, Andrew, as I do when I go to the headquarters office, there are pictures all along the wall. So talking about family, tell us what those pictures are. If you ever have an opportunity to go into a building like this, a company like this, particularly if you can at TD Industries, what I see in those pictures, why are they there?
Yeah, so when I look at that wall, I see just a tremendous amount of experience. At TD, when you've worked there for 5 years, you get your picture up on the wall, and it's of active service. So
5 years, that's it. I got my picture up, 5 years.
When you walk into the fire department, I remember going in and you see the helmets hanging up on the wall with everybody's name, and that's kind of our helmet up there. Is once you've been there for 5 years, you get your picture up there. TD's an employee-owned company, and that's just those are the owners that we have up there on the wall. So it's really neat to look up there and to see partners with 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years of experience. It's a really neat thing to remind yourself, about every day.
I can be here another 50 years.
That's right. With a smile on your face.
Okay, I'm curious. Do you have any questions for Andrew?
Actually, I'd asked him one earlier about how long it takes to install the systems, and he said they can keep up with the construction, but if it's already a built building, usually a couple of weeks, and I think that's remarkable, because it's technology, and anytime you have to, the complexity of it, the fact they've got it down so quickly is very comforting to know that they can get in and get out, and I guess be minimally disruptive to existing customers that are utilizing that building. Is that correct?
Most definitely, and that's a big part of why we're trying to spread the word about it. We're installing pipe and equipment within these buildings, and what we want to do is help bring it in early. We want to be able to help developers and owners and general contractors plan for it early on.
Ahead of time.
Right, because as you've talked about, there's 6 in Plano and there's more coming, but we're also seeing other jurisdictions adopt this code, and we want to be there to help them plan for it earlier, because if we plan for it earlier, we're going to save cost, we're going to save time, and we're going to help meet the owner's objective, which is to get that certificate of occupancy, and we know that that's the ultimate goal here, and really bring our expertise in. So when that system, hopefully it's never used, but when it is used, it's ready.
Mm-hmm. So I was asking you, Sam, when we were talking on the phone about if I were in a building, any building, restaurant. I go out to dinner tonight and I'm in a restaurant and there's a fire alarm. I said to you, how do I know the best place to get out? And you said back to me, well, Valerie, where do you think you would go? And I don't know about you listeners, but here's what I said. I said, well, I'd look for the exits. To which you said, what?
I don't necessarily remember verbatim, but I probably said something to the effect of that's the wrong time to be looking for the exits. You should know where the exits are at before the emergency occurs, and to know secondary or tertiary ways out of the structure. Like for a restaurant, I believe I told you example is when everyone's running for the front door, you can go for the kitchen because there's going to be an exit out of the kitchen because they're not going to take the trash out where the customers are at. So there's going to be a back door out of the facility. So it's just a matter of, my bride, she used to get so angry, or not angry, but frustrated because as soon as we check in a hotel, my boy was little, the first thing I did after we unpacked, said, all right, we're going to do a fire drill. And I made them come out with me and count how many doors there was between our room and where the exit, where the stairwell was at. Because you don't take elevators in a fire.
No.
So you want to go to that stairwell. But to find it in a smoky environment is not the time to know where it's at. You want to know that it's 7 doors down and to the left, for example. And so it's just a matter of having situational awareness about where you're at and making sure that that you know in advance if something comes up, what am I going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Really being aware when you go in any building, just heighten our awareness today, particularly today.
I love what was said. Wow, my levels are really high. What you were saying about children and including them in preparation. That's really interesting because most people think about it maybe later in life or when something happens, whereas versus preparing them and making part of, oh, let's play a game. Can you count instead of how many cars are going through the street, how many exit doors can you find?
Yes.
Right?
That and just even in your own home, I mean, if I may do a shameless plug for the fire service on behalf of all firefighters everywhere, is that do exit drills in your home and make sure that your children know how to get out, alternate ways to get out, whether it's their bedroom window, and have a meeting place. And it's imperative that the meeting place doesn't move. So like the neighbor's mailbox or a big tree, don't give them something that could be transportable and not be there when the emergency happens. So that they know to get out of the house rather than to come looking for you, because children want to come find their parents, but their passage may be blocked, and so you want them to get out while they can. So teach them how to get out and then have a meeting place where the whole family trues up and make sure they do a head count and they have their family together.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you, Anna, for asking that question. And I encourage all of you to make comments, if you haven't already, in the comments section. And even after the fact, maybe after the show, you think of something that maybe you'd like to know. We watch those comments, don't we, Anna? So
yes,
come on,
absolutely.
Let me hear from you. And if you've got a question, I'll either address it or one of these two gentlemen. The last question I have for you before we get back to your leadership lessons that you've learned is it's a stressful time, particularly in your job. So how do you de-stress?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm a Christian, so I think my faith has a lot to do with helping me de-stress. Like anything, you turn it over to the Lord and pray about it. I think the other thing is my family. I spend as much time as I can with my grandbabies and, of course, with my wife and my son. And I think it's just, making it a point to make sure that you stay active and that you have some hobbies or some things outside of work that you enjoy, and just stay focused and centered, and just realize that bad things happen, and you have to deal with them. Don't try to suppress them. Talk it out. In the fire service, that's a real, just you hit on something that's very dear to me in the fire service. We do see a lot of bad stuff, and that's probably one of the epidemics in our profession right now is the mental health aspect and not just the physical health of our firefighters, because they do see so much. So we're having to learn and we're having to teach them about how to de-stress, warning signs of someone that's being stressed out, and how to cope with it. And like I said, I've just been blessed that I've got a lot of support network around me, and a lot of my family that has allowed me to do what I do, and they take care of me. And if they see me getting stressed, they make sure I go fish or golf or do something to take vacation.
Good advice. Thank you for that. And what about you? How do you de-stress?
Yeah, when things do build up, and you do have stress, and it's all on how you manage it. For myself, having a good action plan of what you're going to do moving forward is one of the most critical things. And I was taught, a lean method early on a project of just doing a data dump, and the data being whatever's on your mind, and just getting it all written on paper, and then having a plan to help back that up. And a lot of prayer helps on that action plan as well. And the support system that you have around you. You can't do it without the loved ones around you. It doesn't always have to be those that are family to you. It can be just somebody close by that has an open ear to talk through things. So prayer, family, and a good plan.
I like both of those. Well, besides those, what I do is cook. I get in the kitchen because when I'm cooking, Hattie knows this, you're thinking about that recipe and you're trying new things, and nothing is in my mind. It's just, so I'm a good cook. This has been really interesting. I want to thank both of you for being on the show today and sharing some insights into this new technology, number one, and just the important part that you both play in keeping people like me safe and my family. So thank you for your service and for your leadership. Is there any final thing that you would tell the listeners that I call teachable points of view, lessons learned that you'd want to pass on? Anything else come to mind?
So, yeah, one of TD's core values is to fiercely protect the safety of all of our partners. And when we think about safety, it has to deal with more than just an injury. And you brought up the mental condition of someone, but it's more than also just those that are working on your team. It could be those, customers, clients. It could be a family friend that you see, but just being out there looking for individuals. If they're struggling, be a lending hand and be a partner with them, and look for ways that you can improve things. FARS was that for us on what we can do to add, to a building and help improve the infrastructure of a building, but just always be on the outlook for what can you do to make something better or someone better.
I like that. Thank you. Sam?
There's so much that deals with leadership and teachable moments, but I think one of the things that I always think about is, as I said earlier, firefighting is the ultimate team sport. Yeah. And so you have to really work together as a team. But I think sometimes it's easy as a leader to think you have all the answers, or that you should have all the answers, and it may be the newest member of your team that actually has the answer that you need at that moment in time. So don't discount anybody on your team. Don't think that because they have less experience that they don't maybe possess the answer, and just look at the value that collectively everybody brings, and you bring all those parts together, and the total is obviously going to be better than the individual parts. So I think embracing your entire team, and don't discount anybody on that team. Make sure everyone has a good voice, and that they're empowered to share that voice.
And thank you. I'll add one more thing to that, because in branding work that I do, often I'm trying to help someone learn how to share their voice, because not everyone will have the I don't want to say self-esteem, but confidence, the confidence that they have a voice to share. They've got a point of view. That's why I call these leadership lessons points of view. All of you have a point of view, and it needs to be heard. And from a company standpoint, isn't that something that you, as a company, should always keep in mind, that the number one motivation for all people is we just want to feel valued. We want to feel like we're contributing, like we're making a difference. And so when you ask me my point of view and I'm able to give it to you, that's a win-win. So that's my point, and I'm sticking to it. I want to thank all of you for listening today. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, because I so want to keep this one of Apple's top 25 business podcasts, and I can only do that through your help. And if you want to know more about all of these things we've talked about today, you can look on the screen right now, or if you're listening, I'll say it. You can go to TDIndustries.com/FARS installation. That's TDIndustries.com/FARS FARS-installation. And until next time, you stay authentic and live your brand. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.